In January 2024, a small group of scientists working at a Chinese deep space telemetry station picked up something unexpected, something that hadn't appeared in any of their test models or previous scans of the moon. A pulse. It wasn't strong, it wasn't consistent with cosmic radiation or background electromagnetic interference, but it repeated every 12.6 seconds, and it came from below the lunar surface. Most people assume the moon is just a cold, dead rock. No atmosphere, no magnetic field, no activity. But this wasn't random noise. It was deliberate, structured, a signal coming from the far side of the moon. The data originated from China's Chang'e 4 mission, the first spacecraft in human history to land on the moon's hidden hemisphere. On board was a ground-penetrating radar system designed to scan beneath the lunar crust, searching for volcanic layers and old impact records. Instead, it found a cavity, 80 meters wide, hexagonal, perfectly symmetrical, not a lava tube, not an ice deposit, not a void left by natural erosion. It was a shape that didn't belong. Within hours, Chinese scientists scrambled to reprocess the radar data. The cavity wasn't empty. It contained a dense metallic object roughly 3 meters in diameter, emitting a weak but persistent electromagnetic signal. That signal wasn't coming from solar reflection or internal heat. It was artificial. The news never made headlines. No public announcement was made, but a leak, an image, emerged online weeks later. A blurry thermal map showing a glowing pattern centered deep beneath the lunar surface, aligned in a shape too geometric to be natural. The caption read only, "It's not ours." That image would later disappear, taken down from every site it was posted on. The accounts that uploaded it were deleted. Forum threads discussing it were closed. But by then, the damage had been done. Whispers spread, and one question began to echo across space agencies and independent observatories alike. What did China find on the far side of the moon? For decades, the moon was considered finished. After the Apollo and Lunar missions, humanity turned its focus toward Mars, asteroids, and the distant outer planets. The moon had become a relic, interesting, but scientifically exhausted, until suddenly, it wasn't. The return began quietly. SpaceX and NASA pushed forward with the Artemis program. Private companies began testing lunar landers, and China launched the Chang'e series, step by step, methodically. Chang'e 1 orbited, Chang'e 2 mapped, Chang'e 3 landed. Then came Chang'e 4, targeting an area no one had dared explore, the Von Karman crater, deep in the South Pole Aitken Basin, the largest and oldest impact structure on the moon. Why that site? Why land in the most inaccessible region of the lunar surface? Officially, it was about exploring untouched geology, but off the record, multiple agencies had flagged that region as geologically anomalous as far back as the 1970s. The Soviets had mapped it. NASA had captured high-resolution images, but both had quietly avoided it. Until now. Chang'e 4's landing was perfect. It deployed its rover, U-22, which immediately began scanning the ground below. Everything seemed routine, until day 36 of the mission. That's when the radar hit something unexpected. At a depth of 40 meters, the signal reflected back unusually strong. Not scattered like it would from rock, not absorbed like dust or regolith. It bounced, like radar striking metal. The object's surface was smooth, cold, inert, but not completely. As the lander passed overhead again, the pulse began. It wasn't a natural frequency. It didn't match any known lunar resonance or seismic activity. It wasn't a distress beacon. It wasn't a radio echo. It was timed, predictable, precise, and it was getting stronger. For 3 days, the signal maintained its rhythm. Then it abruptly stopped. The lander registered a thermal spike beneath the surface, just for a moment. Then, nothing. Silence. But the scans were already recorded. The Chinese research team ran the data through AI models. The heat distribution, material density, and electromagnetic patterns matched nothing. Not iron, not nickel, not any known alloy. Whatever this was, it had a thermal signature that resisted simulation, almost like it was designed to avoid being seen. That's when the Chinese government stepped in. The mission's raw data feeds were encrypted. Live updates were shut off. Public commentary ceased. But the silence was noticed. NASA, ESA, JAXA, even India's ISRO, all began quietly shifting orbital assets toward the same region. Satellite time over the South Pole Aitken Basin increased. New contracts were issued. Artemis targets were revised. A global pivot had begun, but no one admitted why, except someone had seen this before. Someone had seen it before. In the early 1970s, Apollo 16 passed over the Von Karman crater and captured high-altitude photos, most of which were never released. Buried deep in NASA's internal archives, one blurry image showed a symmetrical hexagonal depression casting sharp shadows, exactly where China's Chang'e 4 landed decades later. Back then, it was dismissed as a photographic artifact. But after China's discovery in 2024, a private researcher resurfaced that image. The metadata confirmed it. Apollo 16th of April, 1972. Same coordinates. NASA had seen it, long before anyone else. More evidence emerged. In 2009, a leaked research program called Sub-Lunar Echo revealed that NASA had been studying strange radar reflections from the moon for over a decade. Though officially intended to find ice, the classified goal was to identify unnatural cavities, exactly like the one now confirmed by China. Meanwhile, ESA's 2013 thermal scan had flagged the same region as abnormally warm during lunar night. Temperatures there dropped more slowly, something only possible if heat was being trapped underground. That wasn't geology. That was insulation. Artificial. Then came the gravitational anomalies. Japanese scientists had mapped spiraling mascon fields centered on the crater, suggesting something dense and magnetic buried deep below. It wasn't random. It radiated outward like a hub. Patterns began to form. An astrophysicist compared this structure's geometry to ruins found on Mars in the Cydonia region, another hexagonal foundation. Could this be a part of something bigger? A network? A vault? A beacon? On Earth, intelligence satellites began shifting orbits. The U.S. and China repositioned their moon-facing assets. Data flows increased, all encrypted, all silent. And then a final clue emerged. When researchers modeled the cavity's dimensions, they discovered it resonated at a frequency that matched the signal, 12.6 seconds. That's not a coincidence. That's calibration. This wasn't just a void. It was a resonator, a device, one that might have been dormant for thousands, maybe millions of years. And something we did may have just turned it on. The more scientists studied the anomaly, the more it began to look like a machine. Not a satellite, not a probe, something bigger, older, purposeful. Simulations showed the hexagonal cavity wasn't random, it was tuned. The angles, the symmetry, the proportions, they followed mathematical constants found in harmonic resonance systems, the same principles used in ancient architecture and in modern antennas. It wasn't just buried, it was anchored, as if meant to remain in place against tectonic shifts, micrometeor impacts, and even lunar quakes. Built to last. Some researchers speculated it could be a planetary resonator, a passive device that uses vibration and gravity to amplify or detect signals across great distances. A kind of cosmic tuning fork, one that might activate only under certain conditions. Others offered a darker theory. It wasn't passive at all. A data vault, a surveillance node, or worse, a warning system. Its location on the far side of the moon, forever hidden from Earth, suggested intent. It wasn't meant for us. It was facing outward, toward deep space, toward something else. One physicist suggested it could be part of a triangulation array, a system of ancient devices spread across celestial bodies to form a kind of galactic communication net. If so, the moon's structure might be one of many. That theory gained traction when similar anomalies were identified elsewhere. A radar shadow beneath Ganymede's southern hemisphere, a deep-frequency echo under Olympus Mons on Mars, a gravity dip near the Mariana Trench on Earth. Separate incidents, separate planets. But similar characteristics: hexagonal geometry, abnormal resonance, and thermal persistence. What if they were all connected? And what if the one on the moon had just reactivated? Whatever it was, it hadn't made a sound in thousands of years, until now. And now that it had, every major space agency was racing to understand what they were really standing on, and whether something else might be listening. If something truly had reawakened beneath the moon, the world's space agencies weren't saying a word. There were no press conferences, no interviews, no speculation, only quiet escalation. Within days of the signal event, NASA's Artemis mission shifted priorities. A new set of coordinates was quietly added to its lunar mission database, coincidentally located less than 200 kilometers from Chang'e 4's landing site. Not a place of interest before. Now, a top priority. SpaceX received a sudden funding boost. Blue Origin accelerated testing of its lunar lander. The European Space Agency rescheduled a series of probe launches. Meanwhile, China submitted a new flight plan for Chang'e 6, its next lunar mission. Its revised path suggested a direct descent near the anomalous structure. But this time, it wouldn't be just scanning. The payload included a subsurface drill. They were going in. Across the board, classified budgets grew. Satellite orbits shifted. Communication between Earth and the moon increased, most of it encrypted. It wasn't just scientific anymore. It was strategic. Behind closed doors, the Pentagon held private briefings with aerospace contractors. Whistleblowers reported the use of phrases like reactivation event, non-human technology, and lunar intelligence asymmetry. Publicly, nothing changed. But internally, the world's superpowers had entered a second lunar race, not to plant flags or gather rocks, but to control whatever was buried below. And yet, no country dared say it aloud. Because the moment it became real, acknowledged, it would trigger questions no one could answer. Who built it? Why is it active now? And what happens if we interfere? The secrecy wasn't just about power, it was about fear. Because if this was truly a device, if it had been dormant for eons, and if our actions somehow woke it up, then we might not be the first civilization to do so. We might just be the latest, and someone, or something, might have left it behind for a reason. Some scientists believe the object under the moon is a beacon. Others call it a sensor, a vault, a remnant, or worse, a lock. But one idea stands above the rest, disturbing in its simplicity. What if the moon itself isn't what we think it is? For years, fringe theorists have pointed to the moon's perfect orbit, its synchronized rotation, its strange geological hollowness, and seismic anomalies as signs that it may be artificially influenced, too stable, too precise. What if the structure isn't buried beneath the moon? What if the moon was built around it? A containment shell, a guardian, a failsafe. And what if the pulse, the 12.6-second signal detected by China, wasn't a broadcast, but a reply, a response to something we did, a launch, a drill, a signal we sent decades ago that's only now reaching its destination and bouncing back? Maybe it's been waiting all this time, not to activate, but to be reactivated by us. And maybe we were never supposed to find it. Because every mystery has a pattern. Every anomaly has context. And every response has a sender. If what's under the moon is a part of something larger, if the other anomalies on Mars, Ganymede, and even Earth are pieces of a network, then we may have just stepped into a conversation that began long before us, and may not have been meant for us at all. So the question is no longer, what did China find? The question is, who's been listening? And what happens now that we've answered?